Hello friends, welcome to the channel. Bob here, and welcome to another Embers Adrift video. The game is coming up to the end of its first month. Subs are going to be starting soon, so I thought I'd give you a little update on how things are going, if you're interested. Before that, I want to talk a little bit about probably one of the most important things going on in the game at the moment, and something that really needs to be addressed, and that's the community. It's got what you would expect, maybe a bit extra with regards to the sort of stuff you see in like a global chat or world chat. Earlier on I saw someone put up like a link to a porn site in it, and there's been a lot of swearing and all that kind of stuff. Now, even as someone who likes swearing and finds swearing can be quite artistic when it's done by the right person. I know when I played EverQuest and Ultra Online and Dark Age Camelot back in the day, when my kids were younger, they used to watch the game with me. We'd play it together and that kind of thing. So I don't think there's any excuse for an MMO not to have a chat filter. So that's something that needs to be sorted out quite soon. Nothing to do with being a snowflake. It's just all to do with the fact that players obviously just can't moderate themselves, and so you get all that kind of stuff in it. So world chat is not very good, I have to say. And it needs something needs to happen soon, and hopefully it will. But the other issue, apart from that kind of thing and the obvious trolls, believe it or not, what's worse than that is this. As I mentioned, talked about it before, but it's kind of got a bit worse. This small community of players who have kind of set themselves up as like the Embers Adrift defense force. They've attached themselves to the game like, I don't know, some emotional leech. And they're trying to dictate how people are playing the game and how the game is being played. What you can talk about in chat, all that kind of stuff. And anything that falls out of line is jumped on. It's not a good look for the game at all. I've seen people talk about the fact that it really doesn't look very good. People being driven away. And again, there's kind of nothing really going on at the moment with regards to moderation, like moderating this kind of stuff. I just think that the issue here is that these players are kind of like self-appointed judges, arbiters, decision makers as to what can be talked about in chat and what can't. And while the thing with this kind of stuff is that it's the way that you put things across, so you don't have to say to someone you're not allowed to talk about that in those words. You kind of cover it up. You kind of sugarcoat it in different words and the way that you present these words, essentially. But what you're doing is you're basically saying the same thing, really. And I don't quite understand it. I don't quite know how this happens in MMOs. Why you get this minority of players who seem to want to dictate how others play the game. We're talking about things like in World Chat or on Discord, maybe mentioning something, maybe mentioning a mechanic that's not in the game, asking why it's not in the game. The conversation kind of deteriorates from there, really, even though the questions were quite innocent. It kind of starts off, this is not that sort of game. There are other games like that. If you want to play that sort of game, go and play that game. This is not WoW. Go back to WoW, all that kind of stuff. And it just deteriorates from there, essentially. Bearing in mind, a lot of these mechanics that people are asking about are mechanics that they've seen in classic MMOs. So naturally, this is a game that is referencing classic MMOs as its inspiration, and people are wondering why these things are not in there. It's quite innocent. You do get trolls, obviously, but most of the time it's quite innocent. And these players will get piled on by it's the same players, same names you see all the time. And it really is a bad look. I mean, God forbid you talk about being efficient or min-maxing or what's the best class for this or that. I mean, it's treated like you're asking for a pork sausage roll in a vegan cafe. It's that kind of level of ridiculous. And the weird thing about these kind of things is that quite often classic MMOs are referenced, even though a lot of the stuff that's spoken about is in classic MMOs. Min-maxing, being efficient, what's the best, all that kind of thing. That goes hand in hand with any game. I imagine when games were first invented, whenever that was, back in ages past, maybe, ancient Greece, ancient China, wherever it was, you can bet your bottom dollar that people playing those games back then would min-max them, because that's what games are all about. Any position you're put in where you're playing against someone else, or in this case, playing against an environment. In an RPG or an MMORPG, even more so, because there are numbers that go up. So, of course, in a game where numbers that go up, you can obviously min-max, be more efficient, all that kind of stuff. But there are players there's a minority of players in this game that don't want that. You know, they say that's again the same kind of responses. It's not that sort of game. This game's not about min-maxing. Well, of course it is. It's a game. All games are about min-maxing, no matter what game it is. You can min-max noughts and crosses or drafts or whatever it may be. And this game is no different, even more so, as I said, because it's an RPG and it's an MMORPG. That's partly what they're all about. But as I said, this is minority that are not kind of trying to shut all conversation down with regards to that and mechanics that are not in the game that people are talking about. As I said before, it's a bad look. And I do hope that when moderation comes in and they come up with a policy, you know, like a play nice policy, that they don't just address the trolls and the idiots in world chat. They also look at these people who are piling on players who want to talk about stuff that these players don't want them to talk about. And I hope it's done evenly and fairly. Moving on to the game. I would about a week ago, I was kind of on the verge of quitting the game and not subscribing. I think what I'm going to do now is subscribe for the first month, see how it goes. That's a TLDR version of what's about to come. So if that's all you want to hear, you can move on. You can move on now. As I said before, the thing that was really hurting the game for me was the leveling experience. I've seen people say that leveling experience is too quick, which I kind of find quite ridiculous. I mean, either those people are comparing it to... I mean, I've seen some crazy numbers about people, about the amount of time that people have spent playing the game since release, like 250, 300 plus hours to get to the point where they've got to. That's not a reasonable amount of time to reach, let's say, level 30, I don't think. Mine experiences also talking to you guys and spending quite a lot of time looking at world chat and Discord and that kind of thing is that, the leveling process was a problem. I even went back and did a bit of testing on P99, and Embers Adrift is I mean, I haven't really played many Korean MMOs, but from a Western MMO point of view, Embers Adrift is the most grindy leveling process that I've ever gone through. And it got to a point where I just bounced off of it and I didn't want to do it anymore. It was a horrible experience. And I was essentially on the verge of quitting the game. And it was making me play the game in a different way as well, in a way that I wouldn't normally play MMOs. I had a chat with a good friend of the channel, and I realised that the levelling process was making me focus just on levelling. And I know that, you know, some people may say, well, that's kind of not what the game's all about. It kind of is, for the most part, but it also isn't. I understand the whole standing around to, stopping to smell the roses along the journey. That's exactly how I normally play games. In fact, I'm kind of playing New World again, and I'm spending more of my time stopping to smell the roses than I am leveling. I'm starting on like a new fresh start server or whatever it is they call them. So it wasn't that. It wasn't the problem wasn't necessarily that I wasn't stopping to smell the roses. It was the fact that the leveling process was just so grindy that it was forcing me to do that. But I did kind of take a break out. I did some quests. I've been camping some mobs. I've been doing like camping. The game. There are some parts of the game that almost feel like EverQuest. So when I'm sitting there at a camp trying to spawn a rare mob for a drop, it almost kind of really feels like EverQuest. When you're running through a dungeon with a group or however many people it is you're going through, it kind of almost feels like EverQuest. Not quite, but it all kind of almost does. So but I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed those parts of the game that I've played. I've done some quests as well, and I've enjoyed the quests. They're kind of fairly basic in the way that they progress forward, but there was a quest that I did that was about some stolen weapons and armor that I really enjoyed. And one of the things I liked the most about that quest was the fact that if you went to some of the spots, some of the locations where you had to look for the missing weapons, there were mobs there, and you could spawn name mobs. When you killed the name mobs, they dropped a note, and the note was part of the quest in the sense that it was like flavor text or lore text. You didn't have to turn them in for anything in regards to the quest. They were just notes where the bad guys kind of stealing the arms and stuff, or good guys, whatever, if you want to look at them that way, or neutral, it was kind of like information that was being passed by messenger between the kind of like the named tough big dudes who were involved in the weapons stealing, and it was just them talking to each other by notes. But it was nice because it added a nice bit of flavour text to the quests, and I enjoyed that. So yeah, so the questing I've been enjoying. The camping, the mobs and stuff I've been enjoying, particularly trying to get named and all that kind of stuff. And also with regards to going in dungeons and stuff, I kind of enjoyed all that stuff as well. And over the last kind of like week or so, I've been enjoying the game more. But the problem was I was starting to get to that point again where I needed to start leveling again to progress. Because the thing is no matter what anyone tells you, leveling in MMOs is the most important part. Yeah, you can stop and do all the other stuff along the way, but leveling improves your character. You get more equipment. You move on to new zones that you haven't seen before. You fight new mobs that you haven't seen before. New equipment drops that you haven't seen before. You go into dungeons you've never been to. That's how they work. That's how our role-playing games work. That's just, no matter what anyone tries to tell you, that's essentially how it is. And I was getting to that point where I was thinking about leveling again, and I kind of didn't want to do it. I was like, no, I just don't want to do this. It's a horrible experience. See, the thing for me, maybe I'm a in the minority, but I would much rather that the leveling experience was something like it was back in beta, where it felt more reasonable to me anyway, personally. And I got to the end game quicker, knowing that there wasn't any content, but I enjoyed the experience. So for me, that's the most important thing. People talk about enjoying the experience. It's all about the journey, enjoying the experience. But then you get some people that say, oh, the leveling experience is still too quick. I don't believe that. You know, maybe you're basing it on these players that have been playing for 250, 300 hours, which are some of the numbers I've heard, which is quite crazy. Maybe you're basing it on those people who are already at level cap for the current content. You can't base it on those people. And if you're not basing it on those people, I just don't believe it. I just feel that you're kind of flexing. You're trying to be more hardcore than you are, you know, because no MMO that I've played in my 24 years of MMO playing has felt quite as grindy as this from a leveling perspective. So I don't really believe that these people are even referencing classic MMOs. This is even slower than that. But with a but, and I'll come to that at the end. But yeah, as I said, like I'm the sort of player who, like if I went through with whatever character it is that you're currently seeing in game at the moment, that I'm for the content that I'm showing you. If I got to the level cap, whatever it may be at the moment, and I enjoyed it, I would go back and start an alt, or I would go around and I would kind of like camp names that I'd missed on my way up. I'd go to locations that I hadn't been to before, dungeons. I'd do some gathering and crafting. There's loads of stuff to do at cap at the moment. You don't need to. I don't think developers need to worry about that kind of thing too much. But I just felt the leveling process was a purposeful stumbling block because there was no content. But I'm the sort of player who will come back to the game again and again if I feel like my time is being respected. I still feel like obviously I think that progress needs to be meaningful, but I think meaningful can tip into just a not very nice experience. EverQuest, I think, is still held up as the prime example for many things, and I think the leveling process is still one of those things. I think it was tough. It was tough going, but it was meaningful. I don't like, I'll be honest. I don't like the hell levels. They were a mistake, and I think they kind of admitted that after a period of time. But yeah, that's how I feel about the leveling process anyway. If I enjoy it, I'll play your game more and I'll stick around more and I'll pay my sub for longer. When I say enjoy it, I don't mean it shouldn't be meaningful. but it should be reasonable. You shouldn't feel like your time is being wasted. And that's where I was, and I was literally on the verge of basically just saying that's it. I'm done with the game, because I did quite a lot of testing, and I kind of got 4 characters up to level 12 or so, and I was making great note of when the character got to level 8, how the leveling curve then kind of really went up. And it got to a point where I was needing, in some cases, like 2 or 3 blue mobs to get a 1% tick of XP. That was just too slow, unreasonably slow in my opinion. But then what happened was, as I was getting to that point where I was thinking about stopping playing, I thought I would kind of level my last character, that last class that I wanted to try out. And I got to level 8, and suddenly things were different. And it was noticeably different because I'd done it 3 times before, and I purposely watched the process, how the curve was working. But when I got to level 8 on this character, I was getting 1% of XP per kill. Through level 9 it was the same, level 10 it was the same, level 11 it was the same, level 12 it was the same. So I'm still leveling because I'm enjoying it. And now in level 13 it seems to feel still the same. Now this wasn't in the patch notes. I can't prove that this has happened, and I understand it's the sort of thing that you wouldn't put in patch notes because you want to see what an unfiltered effect is, and a subconscious effect is on the players, on the leveling process, essentially, without them knowing about it. But because I did so much testing before, it was really noticeable, and it's still noticeable at level 13. So what I predict has happened, and what I hope has happened, is that at these levels the curve has been adjusted a bit, and it's the best thing that could have happened in the game, for me personally. So for me, just from playing MMOs for so long and listening to what you say on the channel, listening to what I see people talking, reading what I see people talking about in game, and the psychology of all this, there's definitely psychological blocks within MMOs. Where people kind of bang their head against, and then it puts them off. It may be camping a mob, how long that takes, or camping a mob, what the drop rate is on a particular item, all that kind of stuff. I also think leveling as well. So for me on EverQuest, when I play on P99, level 30 is kind of like a big point, because up to that point I kind of feel that leveling has been quite reasonable, and enjoyable and meaningful. And you get to halfway, and halfway is kind of like a psychological break point for me, because I feel like I'm halfway and I'm on my way. I've got this character to 30, nothing's going to stop me now, and it's really enjoyable. But what happened in this game was, you're getting to level 8, 9, 10, 11, you're getting to like the early teens, and you're hitting this block already at that point, and it was far too early to be doing it. And it really put me off. I feel that in any MMO, even a classic one where you want progress to be slow, it still needs to be meaningful. And I still think there's a point that you want to ease players into, particularly new players to this type of game. You want them to. I think in a game that's got a level 50 cap, you kind of want to ease them into level 20ish or so, and then from that point maybe you start, cranking up the curve a bit, not unreasonably, but a bit, so that they're aware that they've reached a point where in the 20s thing is going to go a bit slower, in the 30s it's going to get a bit slower still, in the 40s that's where you start to really feel the curve kicking in, and maybe at that point you need to be spending a lot of time to gain a level. That's fine, but not at these early levels. Ease people into the game, particularly new players, so that there's a feeling of accomplishment. And then then the thing is when they hit a bit of a wall, they're already committed. They're enjoying the character. They're enjoying the game. Maybe they've made friends or got into a guild, whatever it may be, and they're not bouncing off of the game. And I'm that sort of player. If I stopped playing this game when I was planning on stopping and playing it because of the leveling curve, I would never have come back. But now, because it appears as though it's been relaxed a bit and I'm having more fun, I will come back, even if, as I said before, even if the game allowed me to get to level 30, 35 or whatever it was reasonably quickly, but there wasn't any content, I would still continue to play the game because I enjoyed the process more. That's got to be the key thing. Even in classic MMOs, it's not 1998 anymore or 99, it's 2022. So I think we want meaningful progress, but we still want to enjoy it along the way. I think that's the most important thing, and it should be the most important thing. We shouldn't be thinking about how can I stop a player doing this, or this in the time that I want them to. It should be more about what feels more fun. And at the moment, anyway, at level 13 for this new character that I've been leveling, the leveling experience feels more reasonable. Although as a veteran player of MMOs, I understand at some point a curve will kick in, but it shouldn't be this far. It shouldn't be this early in the. Oops, I do apologise. It shouldn't be this early in the game. And as I said, it feels very different on this character. Nothing to do with how quickly I'm killing. It's nothing to do with class XP penalties. I don't think the game has any. I'm talking about XP per kill. And I think at the moment, as I'm playing it through, it feels right. It's meaningful, but the leveling speed feels about right. It feels like I'm making progress, but it's not just flippant progress. And I'm going to be level 20, later on this evening. There's a good balance going on. As I said, I don't know if it's because of a change. Maybe it was. I don't know, but it's definitely different. Because I've done a lot of tests. I did a lot of testing. This is my 4th character going through these levels, and it's definitely different. I hope it's not a bug or something and it gets changed back again. That would be really rubbish. But anyway, yeah, just to sum up at the end, there's a lot of stuff that I've been enjoying in the game. Primarily the stuff that has kind of been taken from EverQuest, and now the leveling process feels more reasonable to me anyway. I'm now going to kind of sub my 2 accounts for next month, and I'll carry on playing and see where I get to. As I said before, it's there are some moments where it almost feels like I'm playing EverQuest, and I hope that they can kind of hit those spots at some point in the future. There've been a number of patches since I've last spoken to you, mostly bug fixes. There is a new dungeon went in. It's quite weird because it feels like it's more of like a low to mid-level dungeon. I thought we might see some higher level content before then. But the game kind of needs content at all levels, really. So I guess they're just looking at maybe where bottlenecks are, or they're just going through it on a level by level basis. So more people. So the people around the low to mids have got more to do, more places to go. There is a problem with content, obviously. I've seen people complaining about content. Not enough content, getting to high levels, people only seem to want to go to certain camps, dungeons that seem a bit small, they're not supporting enough players. I've kind of seen a lot of this kind of stuff mentioned, but this is all stuff that doesn't bother me really. It's like as long as the people that I'm paying money to are honest about it, this is what it is. We're working on content, just hang in there, or just come back again at a later date. As long as there's an honesty about it, I'm absolutely fine with it. I don't care if there's no content this week, new content this week, whatever the patch might be, or next week. As long as we're kept in the loop and it's communicated to us as to what is going on, and it's all fine. And I'm happy to, as I said, even if my first character was currently at level cap, I'd still be playing and I'd still be logging in and paying my subs. Because the journey is the most important, and it's not the most important in the sense that it needs to be very, very, very slow. It's about being enjoyable, and leveling this character, as I said, has been more enjoyable, and some of the activities I've been doing in the game are more enjoyable. A lot of you have kind of mentioned your concerns to me about content and longevity, and I do understand it. The game still does need a lot of content, not just content in leveling content, but lots of other stuff as well that I guess we would call as fluff. From a longevity point of view, I don't know. I mean, that's one thing that I'm not personally worried about. I think that the team have been working on this game for long enough. And while if you're more cynical, you might say that, well, they're taking their subs and then content will suddenly start drying up. I don't know about that. I've never got that impression. Whereas on Shroud of the Avatar, for example, I think that I sympathise with some of the people working on that game because they've just been taken from the community because there's no one else to do it. I'm not even sure if they're being paid properly, really. But it's not like the people that are in charge of Shroud of the Avatar. This feels a lot more genuine than that. And yeah, I guess it's one of those things where you kind of just have to accept the fact that it's just how it is. Do you know what I mean? And I don't mean that in the sense that maybe this isn't your sort of game, because I hate that, because that's just driving players off. What I mean is the reality of a small team working on a game, you know, and only being able to do what they can do week in, week out. I think that's probably more what it's all about. The thing I'm concerned probably mostly about now is the population. The population has been dropping a fair bit from release over the last week or so. I've seen 2 or 3 occasions where it dropped below 100. I think it was 80 at one point. And when I'm worried that when the subs kick in, the population is going to get to a point where we're going to start having problems with grouping. Because bearing in mind that obviously all the dungeons and many of the quests need a group. The availability of crafting materials, although that's been a problem anyway, actually. As I said, I've been keeping an eye on chat for all of this stuff, and you very rarely see someone selling the materials to make stuff with. You'll see people selling the finished product, but you'll very rarely see people selling. And I kind of think I predicted that. I kind of think I said that people are either going to keep it for themselves because you need a lot to level up, you know, and once you've finished with iron, for example, you don't really go back to it unless you're leveling up another character with another trade skill, or they're going to just give it to people that they know for them to craft. There's very little, in fact, there's very little going on the trade channel at the moment, irrespective of that. I'm looking through the trade channel at the moment, and it's what is for sale is all finished product. You know, there's not really any stuff at all. In fact, like about a week ago, I had 3 tells from people who saw me gathering, saying, like, "Can I please buy your stuff that you're gathering?" I said, "I'm sorry, I'm not selling it. You know, it's for one of my own. It's one of my own characters. You know, so." Yeah, I mean, once subs come in, depending on the population, maybe that's the thing that we might see looked at. The 2 things we might see looked at because of population, from a grouping point of view. I don't know what they can do about that, but maybe it's rebalancing the mobs so less people can kill mobs to keep progressing. And maybe from a crafting point of view, that's something else that might need to be looked at. You know, if the population gets to a point where there's not enough people to cover that kind of stuff. But anyway, yeah. I kind of think I started to sum up at some point, but then I lost track of myself. But anyway, to sum up, I've been enjoying the game. The parts that I've been doing, I've been enjoying. The game's still got a lot of issues, and there's not a lot of content. But what I've been doing, I've been enjoying. But I was considering stopping the game, but with this new character that I've been leveling, it appears as though at low levels anyway, there's been a bit of an easing of the XP curve, which I feel was the absolute right thing to do if that's what's happened. I'm not imagining it, definitely. I've done too much testing to imagine it. It kind of feels that it's happened. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'm still playing. I'm playing generally off peak, as I always do, because I can't really play in the evenings. Yeah, but anyway, thanks for listening and watching. And if you're listening or watching from work, get back to bloody work.